Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we continue our journey through the history of the Qin Empire, focusing on its third ruler, Duke Xian of Qin. He was a strategic leader who pulled off an impossible feat, expanding Qin's power far beyond what seemed possible at the time. Previously, I talked about Duke Wen of Qin, the second ruler of Qin. He reigned for 50 years, which was quite remarkable. Back then, a generation was roughly 20 years, and the average lifespan was only around 30-something years. So Duke Wen, who ruled until almost 70, was exceptionally long-lived. In fact, he had the second longest reign in Qin's history. But such a long reign brought a problem. Duke Wen ascended the throne as a teenager, ruled for 50 years and lived to nearly 70. By the time he passed away, his son would have been in his 50s. Naturally, his grandson ended up inheriting the throne. Duke Wen not only outlived many of his brothers, but he also outlived his own son. His son died when Duke Wen was 48, so when Duke Wen finally passed away after 50 years on the throne, it was his grandson who succeeded him. That grandson was Duke Xian of Qin, the focus of today's video. Now, pay attention to this historical detail. In records of the grand historian Shiji, the third ruler of Qin is listed as Duke Ning of Qin. However, in other sections of the Shiji and in later archaeological findings, such as unearthed bamboo slips, his name is recorded as Duke Xian. These two names actually refer to the same person, and Duke Ning was likely a scribal error. After all, this period of history is incredibly ancient. Some sources claim Duke Xian ascended the throne at 7 years old, while the Shiji states he was 10. But if you carefully examine the timeline, you'll find a major issue. Since he was the eldest grandson, no matter how you calculate, he should have been in his 30s at that time. When Duke Xian took the throne, Qin's capital was in Xicheng. At that time, Qin's territory stretched westward to Qishan and eastward to Chengcheng, covering only a relatively small area. However, in the second year of his reign, Duke Xian relocated the capital to Chengcheng, essentially moving eastward. What made this possible was the decline of the Guanzhong nomads. The Guanzhong had once destroyed the Western Zhou dynasty, killed the Zhou king, and occupied Haojing, establishing their own kingdom known as the Dang state, or in some records, the Tang state. However, this regime was caught between the pressure of both the Western Rong tribes and the Eastern Zhou, and it collapsed after just over 60 years. In Duke Xian's second year, as the Dang state fell into crisis, he saw an opportunity and moved eastward, ready to take advantage of the situation. The very next year, he launched a military campaign against the Dang state. The Shiji records that Qin launched a surprise attack, defeated the king of Dang, and took control of Dangshe. This battle is only briefly mentioned in historical records, but when you look at the map, you'll realize its significance. The exact location of Dangshe isn't specified in the texts. Based on my analysis, it was likely in present-day Bailuyuan, southeast of modern Xi'an. So why was this battle so important? If you look at a modern map of Xi'an, you'll see that the city spans both sides of the Wei River. But in ancient times, Haojing, the old Zhou capital, was on the northern bank, and the Wei River was a massive natural barrier, effectively dividing the Guanzhong region into northern and southern halves. By capturing Bailuyuan, Duke Xian of Qin secured control over the southern part of Guanzhong. By this point, everything south of the Wei River was under Qin's control, an absolute disaster for the Dang state. Previously, Dang had to defend against the Western Rong from the north, Qin from the west, and Zhou from the east. It was only through this delicate balance that they managed to hold on to Guanzhong. But now, after losing Bailuyuan, the Dang capital, was left completely exposed, separated from the Qin only by the Wei River. And the worst part? There were no natural defenses left. Whenever the river's water level dropped, the Qin could cross with ease. In other words, half of Guanzhong was Aussie and the entire region was now at Qin's mercy. Duke Xian of Qin had an incredible strategic vision. He took a single bite and swallowed half of Guanzhong. Then in the 12th year of his reign, 9 years later, he launched a surprise attack and captured the Dang capital, Haojing. This shocking and unexpected victory completely toppled the Dang state. With this, Qin claimed all of Guanzhong in what can only be described as a pulling off an impossible feat. A true case of the snake swallowing the elephant. At the time, Qin was far weaker than the Western Rong, so no one had expected them to be able to defeat Dang. The victory likely took even the Qin themselves by surprise. However, it's also possible that Duke Xian was wounded in this very battle. The fall of Haojing. Shortly after this decisive moment, Duke Xian of Qin passed away. Records of the Grand Historian states that Duke Xian ascended the throne at the age of 10 and died in battle at 22, after ruling for 12 years. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, his age is a highly debated topic in history. Historical records give conflicting accounts about Duke Xian's age. Shiji describes him as the eldest son, which would mean that when his father died he was only around 10. But if that were true, it would mean his father didn't have a son until his 40s. An oddity in an era where the average lifespan barely exceeded 30. More importantly, how could the Qin, in such turbulent times, possibly allow a child to rule? We know that before Duke Xian's time, there were multiple instances of rulers stepping aside for stronger contenders. This tells us something crucial. Qin's succession wasn't based on primogeniture, it was based on merit. In other words, power belonged to the most capable. Later historians framed this as acts of humility and self-sacrifice, but in reality, it was about strength. That's why I find it unlikely that Duke Xian took the throne at 10. Even if his father had him late, his uncles would have had adult sons by then. Qin would never have handed the kingdom to a child unless it was under extreme circumstances. Regardless of what the records say, one fact remains undisputed. In Duke Xian's 12th year, the Qin defeated Dang, crossed the Wei River, and took full control of Guanzhong. But why does his age matter so much? Because hidden behind this question lies another mystery. Here's the truly fascinating part. Not a single record from the Central Plains, including the Zhou royal court, mentions Qin. Think about it. Qin had just pulled off an earth-shattering victory, seizing all of Guanzhong. And yet no one seemed to care. Why? Because the feudal lords of the spring and autumn period had way too much on their plate. At that very moment, the Central Plains were in utter chaos. Duke Zhuang of Zheng was making a bid for dominance, even waging war against the Zhou king himself. Meanwhile, the major states were busy forming alliances. Zheng, Lu, and Qi banded together against the Song-Wei coalition. With all eyes fixed on these power struggles, Qin's conquest of Guanzhong went completely unnoticed. To them, Qin was just some distant western tribe, and whatever happened out there had nothing to do with them. This was a recurring pattern in Chinese history. Once the spring and autumn period began, states became so consumed with internal conflicts that they stopped paying attention to external threats. Even when massive shifts were happening right under their noses, they simply ignored them. The Central Plains aristocrats were so obsessed with their own feuds that they didn't even know who Duke Xian of Qin was. They had no idea how old he was or what he had accomplished. And yet, right under their watch, the Qin had unified Guanzhong. In fact, Qin would eventually march all the way to the gates of the Central Plains itself. Yet still, No one knew who they were or where they had come from. Unbelievable, right? That's all for today's story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more.